I made me more anti-Catholic.
So I went back, finished high school, went off to college. I went to Stanford, and I had no religion at that point. I hadn't thought about what religion I would be. I just knew I wanted nothing to do with this. I thought, I don't need this anymore. This young, naive, ridiculous view of like, well, the smart people don't do religion. So went through my freshman year of college, and having had this great overseas experience in high school, I wanted to go overseas during college. And I wanted to go overseas to enroll directly in a foreign university. It's wonderful with their overseas programs where Americans can go. They have American-taught classes with others in English. Because a lot of people go overseas and they wouldn't always get that experience. But I just knew, having learned German when I was young, I wanted to enroll and be like in a foreign setting. So I narrowed it down to two places that would be really different. I thought Western Europe, been there, done that, which is a silly, childish view that that's how I felt after high school. So I thought, well, I could go to Togo in West Africa, because UC Santa Cruz had a program there and I had French. Or I could go to East Germany. Communist East Germany. I thought, that would be interesting. That would be really different. But I was very naive and adventuresome. And so I looked into this, and it just so happened at the same time that the East German government had come up with a new program to invite 5 Americans to East Germany for a year on scholarships. And they offered these scholarships to universities where the government had personal relationships, and one was Stanford. And so for my sophomore year of college, I got a scholarship from the communist East German government. This was 86, 87. To go study in East Germany. And I went to Leipzig, which is south of Berlin, and I enrolled at Karl Marx University. And I lived in a dorm with foreign students from all over the Soviet-influenced world. So from the Soviet Union, we had Russians and Uzbeks and Tajiks, etc. We had students from the Republic of Georgia, from North Korea, Vietnam, ANC, African National Congress, the Communist Movement of South Africa. We had Sandinistas from Nicaragua, that was the Communist Movement of Nicaragua. And early on, at the very beginning, before the classes really got going, a student asked me at a social event, "Are you Marxist?" And I thought, well, I don't know. I don't know enough to be able to say yes, but I also don't know enough to be able to say no, I'm not. And I thought, well, it seems like an important question here. Everything's based on this. And so for my studies that year, I chose to enroll in the Marxism-Leninism program. And the university required 6 semesters, so 3 full years sequentially, of Marxism-Leninism for all students doing an undergraduate degree. And I got permission to take all at once, but the sequence of them is very important for their system and for my story. So the first year was a year of philosophy, and you were required to have a year of philosophy before you could study economics, and certainly before you could study politics, because it was not an economic system. This was a philosophy. This was a whole worldview, and economics were only an afterthought, a consequence of what they thought existence was. So I enrolled, and in the philosophy course, it was a small seminar, and fortunately we had a fantastic professor who was a true believer in Marxism-Leninism, and he was a wonderful teacher, instructor. And I remember on the first day of class, he told us that the point of this course for the year was to figure out what is true about existence. And I had never in my entire life had that question introduced to education. Yeah. I knew how to study for the test. I where I grew up, secular education, secular environment, largely secular at home. 1970s, feminism was assumed in the area. A little girl was told, life was your career and beating the boys. I didn't know anything else. When I went to Stanford, I was in one of the last classes to have the Great Books program, fortunately. And I had a sense in the Great Books program at Stanford that there were some ideas that I liked and some that I was kind of. But the Great Books program was really open-minded and wanted to expose us to great thinkers who disagreed even with each other, and that was okay. But I didn't have any notion of to ask, is this true or is this not true? So this rocked my world. Yeah. And it also made me more curious about what I had enrolled in. I was now this matters. And so the philosophy course started out by studying, it was a course in materialist philosophy. So the idea that physical matter is the primary thing of existence, And anything that is abstract or an idea or ideal only comes afterwards as a response to physical matter. So we started out by studying ancient Greek philosophers who were early materialists, Democritus, Anaximander, who focused on physical elements, some of them such as fire, air, water. That was the foundation. And it was also, I think, emphasized to us that materialism is something that humans have been attracted to very early on, not just lately. And then, looking back at this, especially as a Catholic, it's sort of the funny part, we skipped from there to Feuerbach, because nothing happened in philosophy in between. So no Aristotle, no Plato, no Thomas Aquinas, not even Hegel. He was too idealistic for them. And then the course focused sequentially, and fortunately, we read our primary source texts: Feuerbach, Marx, Engels, and Lenin. And it was in historical and dialectical materialism. So we're studying how history unfolds and the role of matter in the dialectical way of exploring existence. And interestingly enough, the course didn't talk about or mention atheism until that was in our curriculum. I don't know. I want to say maybe like 6 to 8 weeks in. I have my notebooks. I need to go back and look and see if I can find this date. And this was really interesting because atheism was just simply assumed. But what they've really done is given us the groundwork, primer, so that by the time they introduce atheism, it's just obvious. And by this point, I'm feeling the temperature starting to heat up. I'm going to have to figure out if this is true or not. I was even a bit upset. Here's this whole explanation about existence. Why haven't you told me about this before? Because if this is true, this matters. So I was also studying even more intensely. I was working very hard to prepare for this class because I thought this is important. And it was fascinating. It was completely new to me. We were assigned to read an essay by Lenin that we were going to discuss on why you can't have Marxism and Leninism, as they called it, without atheism. And so I was in the reading room of the Karl Marx University with rows of tables and students. It was a reference room, so I was surrounded by the collected works in multi-volume sets of Marx, Engels, and Lenin, multiple copies of them, so make sure everybody had access. And I'm reading this essay, and at this point, I'm not asking the question of atheism or God. I simply wasn't. God wasn't even on my radar. It was this might really be true. It was like I was going forward towards a cliff with a dark abyss, and the only thing in my sight was that abyss. That's where I'm supposed to go. Of course, I didn't view it as an abyss at the time, but I was really gonna have to make a decision. And I'm reading, trying to understand the essay, and in one moment, all of a sudden, I had an experience of God. All I can say is God broke into my life. I was getting chills remembering. I wasn't questioning God, thinking about it. I was listening to Lenin explain why atheism is a sine qua non. You have to have it. And that moment, it wasn't a rational thought process at the bottom of the syllogism. It was an experience of God as my creator. And God is creator, and we're created. And I had a sense of just peace and ease, obviously utter, total, complete awe. And interestingly to me, and it makes sense now that I understand where this experience led. I wanted to turn around to the other students in the room and say, and talk to them, shake them, even say loudly, you don't have to be miserable. God exists. But I didn't. And obviously American there, that was already the tense, and the experience was overwhelming. I remember there were windows, I could see sky and sun. And so walking home that day from the library, I saw the sky and the trees and simple things, but in a completely new way. God created the sky, the tree. God created them, created me. And so that was the turning point in my life that I never looked back. And this was, I don't know, but I wonder sometimes if God realized I was maybe so hard-headed that God needed to put me in these situations.
Well, it's something like materialism, right? People get moderns who haven't really dug into it. Get very excited about that. But the thing with materialism, right, is that it takes just as much faith as anything else. Because how can we get back behind it to prove it? And so God gives you this experience of that, this is what is encountered to that. Right? There is something else other than.
And because this was an experience of God as creator, it was, this is where matter comes from. God made this. So that changed my life. But this was pretty early in my year in Germany, so I still had months ahead.
Yeah. That's just wild.
And that year, God sent me what I can only describe in a way as angels to accompany me that year. And these were the Polish students. So from as I mentioned, I lived in the foreign student storm. There were foreign students from all over the world, Asia, Africa, South America, who had scholarships to spend 5 years in East Germany doing their undergraduate degree. They had a year of German as a foreign language and 4 years of their degree. And so there were a lot of foreign students. And because Poland was right nearby, there were quite a few Poles. And right from when I got there, the Poles were my friends. And they were also the only students who were crazy enough. Other students, some were a little afraid of me, like the North Koreans, who were always in groups, who were being afraid of being seen with me or talking to me. Some students kind of avoided me, some would be very polite. The Polish students sought me out. They loved America. And this was the era of Reagan. And the Polish students who sought me out became my friends, especially one student in particular, were very devout Catholics. There were a few Polish students who wanted to party who weren't real religious, but the Poles were devout believers, and they were fearless. They talked about their faith, church activities, and they were joyful. There wasn't a lot of joy in East Germany. So where there's that spark of light and joy in a dark setting, it was really bright, but there was a problem. They were Catholic. And I really did not like Catholics, did not like the Catholic Church. I'd had that experience. I told you about it in Rome. I looked pagan. I also had this impression that where there are Catholic populations, there's only like just a bunch of old ladies in church. This is like a stale old thing. That was just my youthful view. But these were wonderful people. They were friends. And this was a scary, difficult experience for me in a lot of ways that we don't have time to go into. So having these friends was really wonderful. And when I had this experience weeks later, I intuitively I knew that what I had experienced and what was going on in their lives was the same thing, but they were Catholic. So the Jesus thing didn't come into the picture, but I'm experiencing and growing in this experience of God in this context in which I have these beautiful, wonderful Polish friends. So a couple more months go by, and one evening in the winter, it occurred to me I could talk to God. So I decided to try that, and I discovered prayer. And not only prayer, but this really blew me away. I discovered freedom because I realized instantly this is the only thing the East German government couldn't take away from me. Well, I had my blue American passport, and I had a single exit visa in that passport, which others didn't have. They couldn't leave. In an event of an emergency, I could leave when I had to, but Leipzig is a very important setting militarily, and so instead of just East German police, there were also a lot of soldiers there from the Soviet Union who were armed. When I went to Berlin, for the first months there until I got my visa changed, because they only gave me a single entry, which I used coming in, and a single exit. In East Berlin, I could only experience the Berlin Wall from the eastern side, and I couldn't go to the west. The barbed wire, the armed guards. I went to visit a cousin at Christmas. I got permission to an American who lived in West Germany, and taking the train over that border. Again, the guards, the weapons, that sense of placing into a place where the pressure came off. So it was in this high-pressure, scary environment where I realized in God and freedom. And this is an American from the land of freedom. Experiencing true deep freedom in East Germany. That was another. I finished the year, came back to the U.S., and I had not figured out the Jesus thing. However, in East Germany, in a corner of a used bookstore, in a back corner of a back room, they had a few books in English. And I don't know if it's a God thing or what, but there was a copy of a book that this great youth pastor had told us about by an author I knew of because I loved the Chronicles of Narnia as a child. And the book wasn't just any C.S. Lewis book. It was New Christianity in English. I have that book today.
You would have thought that would have been verboten.
Bad. However, the government tried, the East German communist government tried to sort of tolerate Christians, to prevent rebellion, and maybe because it was in English. Who knows? And also, I really wonder how did that book get there. It was probably smuggled in. And I was like, oh, this is that author, Pastor Bill always talked about, and I respected Pastor Bill so much. So I read it. The first sections on whether God exists, I loved it. Yes, this is what I've experienced. He's explaining what I experienced. Section 2 is the implications of God existing. Their morality. Right or wrong. Yes, oh my gosh. Yes. Section 3 is on Jesus. No. Why do you have to make it so complicated? I don't see the point. So that's where I was at. Sure. And when I come back to the U.S., this is the summer before my junior year of college, the summer of 1987. I was so hungry to meet others who knew God. I was excited. And in America, this should be pretty easy. Here we're free. Here we can talk about it out loud. And so on a Sunday, I thought, well, where else would you go to find people who know God? At church. So I drove to the church my mother took us to growing up. At this point, my family no longer had any connection to the church. But it seemed the obvious place to go. And also, this was the very first time that instead of me complaining and my mother saying, come on, you gotta go, it was me choosing to go by my own will. And it was also amazing to me after East Germany that a group of citizens could purchase private land, and they had the freedom to do on that land what they wanted. If they wanted to build a church, they could. So I really respected that. I was excited about this service. And this was a pretty liberal church that was already fading. I talked to the pastor about this experience I just had in East Germany. He could not have been less interested. And so I thought, I'm not in the right place. Summer goes by, I went back to college, junior at Stanford now, and I really wanted to find students who knew God. I mean, if I can find students who knew God in East Germany, there has to be somewhere at Stanford. But I couldn't, how do I find them? It sounds, some might wonder in retrospect how this was so hard, but I had literally no idea where to go. And it was not a popular topic to talk about still.
Let's take a little break there.
Okay.
We'll come back and see who you found.
All right, great.